You've probably heard Gangnam, but what is Gangnam exactly?
Real estate. Korean gangster films. It's a really fascinating film. You're watching Movie Talk. Gangster! I'm Jason.
And I'm Pierce, and welcome to our show. We're very excited to introduce one of our favorite films to you once more. So, this week, we are going to be recommending something to, I think, people who enjoy
a famous song called Gangnam Style. But of course, we're talking about Yua's Gangnam Blues.
Yeah. And of course, Gangnam Blues is a gangster film. So certainly if you enjoy your Korean gangsters or any gangster film, it's certainly something to watch out for. So.
It looks at this particular area of Seoul and how there was this kind of political corruption going on and how the area basically turned into a real estate battleground. And it focuses on two particular characters played by Min-ho and Kim Rae-won. Now they get separated.
Yeah, two friends who drift apart, and you know, it's also about the kind of the rise of Gangnam, which I think is what makes the film so interesting.
Key scene number 1.
Okay, so I mentioned earlier about this political clash at the beginning of the film. So we have the two characters and basically go in there and destroy everything and everyone in there. In this scene, you've got these two leading characters. You've got the Min-ho character who's like really charged, you know, fired up and you know, ready to go, and whereas the Kim Rae-won character, he's less keen.
He runs off to have a pool. Actually, and he spends the whole fight just kind of having diarrhea in the bathroom. So you know, there's a very difference in these characters, and as the narrative grows, we kind of see more concretely how they are different in that way.
Key scene number 2.
3 years later is when, you know, these characters are now kind of becoming bona fide gangsters, shall we say. And a young Jung-dae, this is the Min-ho character again, he teams up with a young woman to help her in a real estate scheme. They drive south of the river and they go to Gangnam. And this is a really interesting image for anyone who's lived in Seoul or has visited Korea, because they're driving south of the river and there's nothing there. And it's just complete farmland. And that's really, really interesting. They do kind of play it up in the film.
Key scene number 3.
There's this really interesting scene where you've got the rain falling, he's under an umbrella and he's walking through an area of Seoul, trying to consolidate his position. Well, they both go on a bit of a rampage, and it's just visually really, really interesting.
Right, it's one of these classic kind of montages you see in these sort of like gangster films, so as you say, as they consolidate power. And there's a very similar scene in Yuha's earlier gangster classic, A Dirty Carnival, really one of my absolute favorite Korean films.
Yeah, great
absolute
film.
Masterpiece. And I guess shortly after this, there's another really key moment where they, the friends go to an empty area, farmland area in Gangnam, and they meet and kind of start to discuss their plans. Min-ho, of course, rides in on a motorcycle. It's very kind of, you know, his cool image and all that. And they kind of talk about their kind of ambitions.
내가 달리는 데까지 다 내 땅이야. 그래. 낭종대 돈 연기 끝까지 한번 가보자.
And Min-ho is very much thinking he's the forward thinker, whereas Kim Rae-won is just kind of the fast cash and wants to sate his desires quickly, kind of thing.
Key scene number 4.
One of my favorite scenes is that kind of fight scene at the funeral towards the end of the film, and you've got the rain falling. Again, rain. What is it with rain and Korean films? But this is during the day, so...
It is, and it's completely like, you know, they end up become this massive mud fight. And anyone who likes other Asian action films, The Raid 2, the great Indonesian modern classic, that scene from Gangnam Blues is absolutely inspired by that film, which came out a couple of years before.
Trivia.
You mentioned A Dirty Carnival, but let's try and place this film within a kind of a broader spectrum of gangster film.
Absolutely.
So where would you place this film?
Well, I think there are a few loose eras of gangster movies. There have been gangster movies, of course, always in Korean film, and you can kind of go back a bit further and see in context like the General Sun trilogy. But I think really in the modern terms, you have like the late 90s when you had, especially in 1997, three standout films from the era. There was Lee Chang-dong's debut film Green Fish, which we kind of briefly mentioned recently. There was
Beats as well.
There was Beats, and there was Number 3, and these are all great films. Then a few years later, in the early 2000s, we're in kind of like the really stylized era of modern Korean cinema, and you have all these really cool, stylish Korean gangster films, including A Dirty Carnival, which we mentioned, and then Kim Ji-yoon's great A Bittersweet Life, and a whole bunch of other ones. And then we have the era that I think happens around 10 years ago, where they become more kind of operatic, and they deal more with like the organization and the structure of these kind of gangs. And so you have New World, Nameless Gangster, and Gangnam Blues.
Yeah, Korean gangster films, they're a really big part of the industry, and I wish we kind of see more of them, to be honest with you.
So there's a whole bunch of them on the way, actually. There's a bunch that are in post-production right now, so your wish may come true before long.
Indeed.
Pop quiz. When he's living on the street, what does Yoongi use to keep warm?
Light bulb. Yeah.
What song plays when Jongdae first goes to Gangnam?
I know what it sounds like, but I don't know what it's called.
No. 한강, 제 한강.
How many people does Yoongi kill?
It's the gang member with fellow gang member.
I can think clearly of two,
But-
but probably
but-
more.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Which Filipino artist and song is featured on the movie's soundtrack?
It's like, what's his name? Richard Aguilera or something like that. It's a very short song name.
Anak? Is that right? Yuha combines his stylistic flair and ambitious storytelling to take viewers back to Gangnam in 1970 as it turned into a real estate battleground. Yay!
A period gangster film that explores the beginning, the origin of Gangnam's real estate wars. Gangnam Blues is a sumptuous and violent film from director Yuha.
Thanks for watching.
Yes, thanks for joining us. If you're watching us here now on YouTube, and if we've whetted your appetite for the film, please do check out the film. There's a link below in the description.
Gangnam Blues.
Gangster!